So our speaker today is Kunal, and he has been teaching the Bhagavad-gita since 2004 at different universities, as well as at spiritual gatherings. After qualifying as a chartered accountant, he went to India on the Bhakti Vedanta Manor sabbatical program, and then spent 1 year at the Manor ashram to spiritually prepare for the corporate world. He has been working as a professional tutor since 2011, training graduates to succeed as chartered accountants. Kunal loves spending time with his 2 daughters and is currently training in psychotherapy. So welcome, Kunal. Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode. We are so grateful to have you talk to us about this amazing topic and share this knowledge that you've been talking about for so many years. You must have such a wealth of experience on the Gita. And we're just grateful to have you talk to us about this and share your knowledge. So
thank you, Trisha. I really feel grateful to be here. It's always nice to be with like-minded souls, whether we're in person or whether we're online. It's just always nice to discuss these topics that are so pertinent to the soul. And it's a craving inside to look for people who we can talk these subjects with. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you so much for joining us. And it's very true. It's so special when we can gather and talk about such things, even if it's not always in person. It's definitely special that we can make time out of our very busy lives. Everybody here can join us to discuss this. So I know we've been a bit cryptic about the Festival of Lights. We've not said much more about it. So we have brought up the inner transformation in the topic. So getting right into the core of it, I would like to ask you, do we all have a light within us? And if so, what does that light look like?
Thank you, Trisha. Do we have light within us? And if so, what does the light look like? I think the first thing that comes to mind when you say light, especially when we're discussing the Bhagavad-gita, is Krishna. He says in the 7th chapter, text 8, Prabhasmi Shashishuryo Yoho, he says, I am the light of the sun and the moon. So generally, when we think of light, we think of the sun, we think of the moon, which is our source of light. And Krishna in the Bhagavad-gita, he's telling us, actually, I am that light. So what comes to mind for me is actually, if we are studying the Gita, we're reading the Gita, and actually trying to really understand how the Gita can be with us day to day as we live our life, as we go through our challenges. And our challenges sometimes do feel like a place of darkness. The situations we find ourselves in this material world does feel like a place of darkness. So where do we get the light to dispel the darkness? And Krishna is saying, well, I am the light. I am the light. So then the next thing that comes along is, okay, so Krishna is saying he's the light, and I'm here not feeling the light. A lot of us are day-to-day struggling, myself included. We're struggling with our challenges. We've got it's not easy just doing the normal things you need to do, just going to work, looking after a family, having a bit of a social life, maintaining your health, keeping your finances in check, making sure your car's got enough electricity or got enough petrol, all of that. And then your bills come along. I got my gas bill today. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to look at this right now. So many things. The to-do list is getting bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. And what Krishna is giving us light, how Krishna is giving us light through the Bhagavad-gita is he's making himself accessible. And by making himself accessible, he's giving us access to the original light. And by giving us access to the original light, that light can then take place within us. So how does that light take place within us? So how I see it, Trisha, is what is it that we're looking for? And if we really, actually, why don't I ask you, Trisha, what are you looking for in life?
So as you mentioned, there's all these everyday obstacles that we face in life. So I would say what I'm looking for is to live a full life. So experience all those emotions, but actually experience all the other things that come with it in a good balance. So having a balanced life full of the range of emotions that I'm supposed to feel as a human being.
That's very interesting. Thank you. So a balanced life, a full life. And what really interested me there was the emotions you're meant to feel. Can you tell me a bit about those emotions? Because that's an interesting answer.
So I would say we obviously are biased towards the more positive or the light emotions, but that I wouldn't say in any way. I know you're currently even studying some elements, I would say, of psychology and things like that. So there's nothing normal or healthy about only feeling one emotion or only feeling joy. I wouldn't say that's the standard human experience. And even if we evolve, like even if I was a more evolved version of myself, I would still hope to feel touched as a human being in both ways, the good and the bad, and feel the sadness. And I think that the whole spectrum of emotions is really what makes us human. And
Mm.
I think that's what a full life, that's what I would want from life.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. So actually being able to experience the joys and the happiness, but at the same time being able to accept, I think that's what I'm hearing from you there, accept the sadness, accept the difficult emotions that come along without trying to push them aside, without trying to suppress them or pretend that they're not there. Is that, did I get
Yeah,
that? Yeah?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So this is the soul's longing. What you're describing is us, as what Krishna described in the second chapter in the Gita, is that actually we're way beyond the body. We're much more than the body that we're looking at on our screens right now, or that we look at in the mirror. Beyond this body, there's an eternal existence, and that eternal existence is the soul. So Krishna is explaining this because Arjun, he's in such a dark place. He's in a battlefield and he's surrounded by the prospect of death, either his own death or the death of everyone that's very close to him. So it's a very dark place to be. And he goes to the middle of the battlefield. He says to Krishna, take me to the middle of this battlefield and let me see who's around me. Let me see who's around me. And he's got himself into such a dilemma. He's got himself into such a difficult place for himself. And the way that he gets light, the way that he gets fulfillment, the way that he brings himself up is by accessing that supreme light, accessing that original light that Krishna says, Prabhashmi Shashishuryo Yoho, that I am the light of the sun. And that light is actually for us the love that is available in the transcendental atmosphere. So Krishna, he gives us light through love. And that's how that's how our hearts access light. So yes, we're trying to find the light within, but finding the light within is actually finding the love that our heart is longing to give others and also be able to accept from others.
Okay, wow. That's that's very that's very profound. There's a lot of things I would like to discuss in what you just said. So in a way, you would say that the light we have inside us as human beings is the divine light. And it's the same light, not only that we experience in the things beyond us, like you're saying, like Krishna, but that's the same light that we see with our eyes in the sun. So there's a physical element to it, there's an emotional element to it, and there's also a divine spiritual element to the light within us. So it's multi-dimensional.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. We perceive it. We perceive light, like I've got light in the room. I perceive this as getting rid of the darkness in the room. We perceive the emotion of love, dispelling, if you like, dispelling all anxieties around us. And ultimately, it's that divine light that the Lord shines on us that actually gives us a sense of fulfillment and contentment. So yes, there's a physical element, the emotional element, and yes, as you said, the divine element. That's very nicely summarized. I'm going to use that for my future talks, Trisha. Thank you.
Please do. Um, and I know I implied it before, and it's easy to say yes because we hear that a lot. But do we all actually have this divine light within us? Do we all really have it to the same capacity? Do we at least have it in the capacity that we can exercise it? Is it really the same for us all?
Is it the same? Well, I guess that's a really important question. Is it the same? So what we can say, I think, is that the light, the accessing light is available for all of us. Yes, that's available because we are all a spirit soul, and the soul is cognizant, the soul is pervading, the soul is bright. So yes, in that sense, yes, the soul, which is full of, not only could we say light, it's eternal light. This is light that is, it's a spark that was never born and will never die. At the same time, we're all individual. And because we're individual, we all have a different capacity. We all have different likes and dislikes. We all have a different psychophysical nature. We all have different family situations. If you look at it in our current state right now, we have different homes. We live in different countries. So all of that can be different. But what is not different, what is the same, what that light is for all of us is this potential, this capacity and potential to become the best version of ourselves. And this is what the Bhagavad-gita teaches us. This is what Krishna is saying to Arjun. Arjun, you're a warrior. You're a warrior. You're saying you want to go to the forest. This is Arjun's dilemma, right? That I want to go to the forest. I want to run away from this battle and I want to meditate. And I want to meditate. And Krishna is saying to him, and he says this to Arjun in the 6th chapter, Arjun, you want to go to the forest and you want to meditate, but let me tell you something. The person that you got to meditate on is me. So he's saying you want to run away from me, but then you're going to have to just think about me and meditate upon me. So he's saying, why don't you just stay here and be the best version of who you are? And Arjun's psychophysical nature isn't to go to the forest and sit and meditate and be in one place all day. His nature is to be a protector, to be a warrior, and go and do his duty, which was to fight the war. So we all have a different nature. And when we access the best version of ourselves, what we do is we can shine a light within us. And when there's a light shining within us by becoming the best version of ourselves, then naturally what will happen, that light is so radiant, it just shines on everyone else.
Okay, I understand what you mean. So we all have the same capacity. It's really about the agency that we exercise. That's something that's different for all of us. I just have a question about what you said. So as you said, we have a path, a nature, as you put it. And does that imply that some people have a nature to be in the battlefield, to be more action oriented, to serve a certain purpose, while some others have a more stationary purpose, a less active purpose, where it is more about focusing internally? So is that path, is there a balance? Is that different for everybody entirely? And how do we know?
Yeah, how do we know?
What is us?
How do we know what is us? I think there's a simple way of looking at it, and the simple way of looking at it is think about what you really like doing. That was a set. What do I really like doing? And what am I really good at? And think of it like a Venn diagram. What am I
Mhm.
really good at doing? And what do I really like doing? And if you can find something that intersects, and you have that intersect in the Venn diagram, what's in the middle?
Mhm.
Then when we find something that we really like doing and we're really good at doing, then that is generally where we want to focus our potential. That's where our potential is. So it's important to have both. So for example, I can tell you where it doesn't work. So for example, I really like playing football, but I'm not that good at playing football. So therefore, for me to pursue a life of being a professional footballer, it's just not going to work out. Why? Because even though I like it a lot, I'm not that good at it. But at the same time, if I'm really good at something, like I can give you another example. I trained as an accountant, so I'm good at doing accounting, right? But I don't like accounting. Like I don't like being in an office and doing people's accounts and talking to them about their tax affairs, right? Which is what I trained in. But I don't like doing it, but I'm good at it. I can do it. So again, that didn't fulfill me while I was doing it. So then what we want to find is, okay, what do you like doing and what are you really good at doing? So for me personally, and I can just speak about my own example, I realized I'm good at accounting, but I also, because when I was, like I said, like you introduced, like you were saying in the introduction, that I spent some time in India, and then I spent some time living at the temple at the Hare Krishna temple in Watford. So while I was staying at the temple, I did a lot of teaching the Bhagavad-gita. And I realized, and then when I came out of the temple, I realized actually I want to teach. So then I thought, okay, I like teaching and I'm good at accounting. Is there a way I can combine this? And now I teach accounting. So then that way it got combined. And that way I feel like I'm actually living a lifestyle that's more suited to who I actually am. And by living a life um, suited to who we actually are, then what happens overall, that we don't feel that going to work is work. Going to work is just being ourselves. And when we are acting in line with our state of being, right? If our day-to-day life is the same as our state of being, then what happens is we feel very aligned within ourselves. And when we feel aligned within ourselves, then there's no drainage. We're not feeling mentally drained, physically drained, and then we've got a lot more to give to the world. And we're finding happiness within ourselves just by being in line with ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it totally makes sense. So it is very important for us as people to really find not only what we enjoy doing, but also what we're good at. And it's a
Mm,
fine balance because being good at anything requires practice. So it's
mm,
finding out soon enough whether you're good at it enough to practice it, not so late that you spend too much time, but also experimenting. So it's
yeah.
definitely a balance of finding what you're good at, what you enjoy.
Mm,
That includes trying things. Of course, you need to actually try things to find that out. For those who are lucky enough, I guess they can find it quite early. Um,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
then the path from finding or living in alignment
Mm,
with who
mm.
you are to finding the light within. Is that the same path?
The light starts to shine in that path, because what happens, we just have more time. We're more accessible to ourselves. You see, if you're going to do a job, if you're going to let's say you go to a workplace and you hate your job, right? Then generally, and a lot of people in this world, they actually don't like their job. They just do their job because that job brings them sufficient income to live their life. But what happens if we live a life where we are we are not working in line with ourselves? Then what happens is you go to work, you're so drained, you're so tired. When it comes to the weekend, you just want to relax, or you want to go out just to forget what happened that whole week. I just need to go out, I need to go do something just to like forget the misery that happened those last 5 days. And so then there's no real, and because of that, then there's no real time to access our inner light, because we're acting in one sense in a way that's not aligned to who we are, and then we spend the weekend in darkness because we spent the weekend in darkness because of the fact that we were unaligned, and then we go back on Monday morning again, not doing something we're not really in tune with. So if we are doing something day to day that we are aligned with, then naturally what happens, you're not feeling tired at 5 o'clock, or during the day or on the weekends. We just want to keep doing what we're doing. We're living our dharma. That in the evenings there's time to access spiritual knowledge, hang around with like-minded people who are also on this journey of enlightenment. So the light within us is what I'll say is this: it might be scary to find the light. It might be scary to find the light, because to find the light, it's like it might take some hard work. We might have to become really in touch with ourselves in terms of getting to know ourselves a little bit. Just getting to know our flaws, our weaknesses. And a lot of the time, we want to push our weaknesses aside. We want to pretend they're not there. But one week, like you were saying earlier, being accepting of a sad emotion, or being accepting of our fears. Once we become more and more in tune with who we are, just becoming in tune with it and actually being okay with it, then what happens is the light is able to shine more and more and more.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So we're not ever doing anybody else a favor by not living our truth.
Yeah.
It's part of that's our dharma. We have to find our purpose and we have to live it. That in some sense is our spiritual duty, if I've got that correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if we don't live our purpose, then there's no mental, physical, or emotional space to find our spiritual purpose. Definitely. Yes. That's really well put.
Thank you. And thank you so much for answering that question. That really does help frame and understand in a tangible way how we can move towards finding or uncovering that light within. You had initially mentioned Krishna as, in some ways, the source of the light. That when you're out there looking, it's really that what you're looking for. I wanted to ask you about the connection between Krishna and Ram. So Ram is, I will obviously let you answer the question, but another prominent figure of divinity that we consider. And talking about the Festival of Lights, I did want you to please introduce to everyone what the relationship between Krishna and Ram is.
Yes, thank you, Trisha. So the connection between Krishna and Ram, like you said, I like the way you put it. Ram is also another figure of divinity. He's also like Krishna is saying, I am the source of the light of the sun and the moon. See, Ram and Krishna, in that sense, they're the same person. And divinity, God, the Supreme, however we want to address the Supreme, how we can really understand is that at different times the Lord comes here for a different purpose. And Ram came here millions of years ago, but to actually set an example of what it means to be an ideal king, what it means to be an ideal ruler, a ruler of citizens, a ruler of others. So that was Ram's purpose. So that was at that time the reason for the descent of the divinity, we could say, was when Ram came, was to show us what it means to be an ideal king. When Krishna came here 5,000 years ago, he was showing us what it means to have a loving relationship with God. What does it mean to have an intimate, loving relationship with God? So God comes at different times in a different form. It's the same person. He comes at a different time in a different form to give us a different lesson. And when Ram came, it's quite interesting. Some of us probably know the story of Diwali, so which is the festival of lights, and Diwali is coming up on Monday, which is a celebration for many across the world. It's a long story. I don't know how much to talk about when it comes to Diwali, but in a nutshell, what we can say is Ram was the prince of Ayodhya. Ayodhya this is in India, and Ram was about to be coronated, and he was about to be coronated as the prince regent, the future king, and his stepmother got very, very anxious that her son, her biological son, so her stepmother KK got anxious that her biological son Bharat would then be dismissed rather than being loved in the kingdom. So she got worried. She got into a bad association, you could say. She started hanging around. She was hanging around with her maidservant Manthara, who gave her some bad advice. And then Ram got sent to the forest for 14 years. When Ram got sent to the forest for 14 years, his wife Sita and one of his brothers, Lakshman, accompanied him. And 14 years later, so much happened. There's a whole story, as many of us know, in 13 years went by pretty seamlessly. And in the final year, Sita got kidnapped by Ravan. Ravan was a demon. She got kidnapped by him. Ram then, with an army of monkeys from the forest, went and saved Sita, the true hero, the true Lord. He went to save Sita from Ravan. And when Ram was coming back to Ayodhya, the 14 years had elapsed, and Ram and Sita were coming back to Ayodhya with Lakshman and all the monkey warriors. They're all going back to Ayodhya. All the residents of Ayodhya were lighting up lamps to welcome Ram back home. They wanted to welcome him back home. And because what happened when Ram left Ayodhya, Ayodhya became like a ghost town. When the Lord is exiled from our hearts, actually what happens is when the Lord has been exiled from our hearts start to feel empty. So how this relates to us in one sense is we are inviting the Lord back into our hearts to pervade that love that can shine the light within us that we can then shine onto others. So that's in one sense a very quick story, I could say, in terms of Diwali and the Festival of Lights. But happy to talk a bit more about that. But just thought I'd give you a quick summary just to answer your question.
Thank you for that. That actually does answer the question very concisely, and I think that's great for anyone who doesn't have that much context on the story of Diwali as well. So yes, thank you so much for sharing the connection between how Krishna and Ram, and of course the significance of it as opposed to just the story aspect of it. So it's nice to understand it in a way that it is just divinity coming down in its different forms, really depending on what we need. It's about where we are and what lessons we could use, or what inspiration we could use, and that determines the way in which divinity expresses itself to us. Does that kind of, is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. Divinity expresses to us, and also what I would say is that the love of divinity is always there. It's always there. It's just about us. How much do we want to access it? How much do we want to invite that divinity, invite that love into our hearts? And the more we want, the more we desire to invite that love into our hearts, the more we are able to access it, the more we're able to feel it. But it's not that when the Lord is exiled from our hearts, he stopped loving us. The Lord is always loving us. It's just we just need to open up our hearts to accept that love.
Okay, so when Ram comes back to Ayodhya, um, there's a celebration with light, lighting up his entrance. Can you tell us a little bit about, I know you already have, but a little bit more about the symbolism there about him coming back? And are we the people in Ayodhya letting him back into our lives? Is it like that?
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of, I think, so I can give you one example. So when Ram went to the forest, he went, and when Bharat found out that his mum, so his mum KK, Bharat wasn't there at the time. He was away. He went to his uncle's house at the time that Ram was banished. And when he came back to the kingdom and realized what had happened, he said to his mum, "What have you done? What have you done here? You've created such a mess." And KK thought that she's going to make Bharat happy, and Bharat was very upset. So what happened was they all went, Bharat, his mom, KK, all these residents of Ayodhya, they all went to the forest. They went and found Ram and said, "Hey, Ram, go back, go back to Ayodhya. You rule the kingdom." And Bharat said, "I'll stay in the forest. I'll stay in the forest." And then Ram's like, "No, no, 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 no. I'm staying in the forest. You go back and rule the kingdom." So it's totally different to what we see now. Nowadays, power struggles are, I want the power, I want the kingdom. Over there, it was when we see divinity, it's like, no, no, you take the kingdom. No, 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 no. You take the kingdom. You rule the kingdom. So different, is a totally different dynamic. But I'm just coming to you, just to give context to answering your question about the Diwali and the significance of inviting divinity into our hearts, is that Bharat then went back. Eventually, Ram said to Bharat, "No, look, I've made the promise to my father that I will go for 14 years to the forest. So I need to fulfill my promise." And he says to Bharat, "You go back." And Bharat says, "Look, I'll go back, but I'm not going to be the ruler. I will just rule the kingdom on your behalf." So he took Ram's slippers, he put them on his head as a sign of respect, took them back to Ayodhya. He put Ram's slippers on the throne, and Bharat lived in a little place just outside Ayodhya called Nandigram. And this place is like a little forest, a little village, and he lived a more austere life than Ram did in the forest. Okay, so this just shows the love. This just shows the selflessness between the brothers. But the significance of Diwali, in one sense, is also that when Ram was coming back, he said to Hanuman, which was his if you say the prime warrior in the search for Sita when his wife got kidnapped. He said to Hanuman, "Go and find Bharat, and just see when you tell Bharat that I'm about the 14 years have elapsed and I'm about to come back. And if you see in his face any kind of reservation about me coming back, then I don't want to come back. Let him just rule the kingdom. Because maybe after 14 years, he's become attached to being the ruler. He's become attached to being the leader." And as soon as Hanuman told Bharat that Ram is coming, Hanuman found Bharat and told him, Bharat was so excited. He was overjoyed. He just couldn't wait to receive Ram. So what this means, so then Bharat is then telling everyone in Ayodhya, let's invite Ram back. Let's get the lights to invite Ram back to us. What this means is a life of love, a life of light must be with no ulterior motive. And Bharat had no ulterior motive. And because he had no ulterior motive, he had the experience of love in his heart. He had the experience and able to share that love with all the residents of Ayodhya to invite Ram back. So for us, the significance is, can we live a life without ulterior motive. And the more we can live a life without ulterior motive, then what happens is we're able to access that love of divinity in our heart. So this is what Diwali really pushes us towards, receiving this treasure of divine light.
Okay. Again, there's so many things I want to ask you and learn more about what you've just shared with us. And I think for everybody here, even if we know a little bit about the story of Diwali, or even more than a little, this definitely helps us understand it and see it in a new way, in a slightly deeper way. To me personally, the story that you just said, especially about Bharat, it sounds like putting your higher needs above your more egoistic needs, like understanding the importance of divinity over more selfish desires, such as the desire for power. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that. So, if from a personal perspective, you mentioned ulterior motives, which implies there should be a central motive. So what is that central motive? So is it what is our pursuit in which we shouldn't have an ulterior motive?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So what is an ulterior motive? See, ultimately, when we thank you so much, Trisha. It's such an important point. When we say the word well, actually, maybe I'll ask you. When I say the word ulterior motive, what comes to you straight away?
An intention that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned an intention, and I think what you said also was selfishness. I think that's what also you mentioned before. It's like an intention of selfishness. Now, what could have happened to Bharat is he was ruling the kingdom, and actually he ruled the kingdom perfectly well. Everything was running very smoothly in Ayodhya those 14 years. He could have let that get to his head and think to himself, oh, okay, you know what? I'm doing a really great job here. I should be the king. So yeah, sometimes when our intention is just trying to serve our own purposes, when our intention is only trying to serve our own, like you said, Trisha, which I really like, egotistic needs, then what happens is we end up pushing away the light and inviting the darkness. Because we've all experienced it. We're all in the human body where we get tempted to doing something that is maybe what we shouldn't have done, and we've all seen the consequences afterwards. Like, whoa, why did I get myself involved in this? Why did I entangle myself in this? And Krishna talks about this in the 16th chapter, also in the Gita, that we have a divine nature and a demoniac nature. And actually, the divine and demoniac is within us. Actually, it's within us. We've got a divine nature and demoniac nature. It's within us. It's there. We have different desires. But the more we access our divine nature, the more we access the divine nature, the more we're able to experience this love, this light. Now, often what happens, and it's good that you mentioned this ulterior motive. Often what happens is we don't even recognize that we have ulterior motive. We just live the ulterior motive. And when we live the ulterior motive, then we're wondering, why am I not happy? We're wondering, oh, why am I not happy? Why am I so miserable? Or why do things keep going wrong? But we're living a life where we're just trying to pursue selfish desires. Okay, so when that happens, we never actually find satisfaction in the heart. But what's really interesting is when we start to really deepen our desire for a fulfilled life. And when we deepen our desire for a fulfilled life, then what happens is we're happy to look in the mirror, our internal mirror, into our hearts, and really see what is it inside that is blocking me. What are these blocks? What is it inside me that's not letting me access real real peace? Because if we think about what do we really want, we want love, we want peace, we want happiness, we want fulfillment, we want contentment, we want an emotion, we want all these things. But why is it I can't access them? And when we can come into acceptance of our demoniac side, just accepting it, accepting we have it, and by accepting it's there, whatever it is, whether it's pride, whether we are arrogant, whether we are angry all the time, whatever it is, if we could just start to accept it, if we can take responsibility and own it, then what can happen is we can then make steps towards accessing divinity holistically. So this is what the Festival of Light invites us to do. It invites us to find the darkness and then shine light on it. You know, it's like, where is that darkness that the light needs to be shone? And that's the work we have to do. And then when we do that work and find the darkness, the light can really shine. And that's a brilliant Diwali festival.
Wow. No, thank you so much for that. That's a totally different perspective of looking at the same thing. But a conclusion a lot of us probably wouldn't have come to so soon by ourselves. So I want to ask you personally, what does Diwali mean to you in your personal journey? Can you give us a little bit of understanding about how you've been able to uncover or shine light or even make that darkness part of yourself as opposed to shun it away, accept it? How has that happened in your life?
Yeah, thank you, Trisha. There's so much darkness I could talk about. So yeah, so there's many things. I think one thing that I was thinking about today, just today actually, is that how sometimes I get so caught up. I can get so caught up when someone is awkward with me. You know, and when someone is awkward with me, or when someone is a bit weird with me, tricky with me, or wants a conflict with me, or doesn't like me, one thing for me was, and it was a really profound moment. That it was about a couple of years ago, and I was talking to one of my friends, and I was saying to him, you know what? If someone doesn't like me, and he finished the sentence for me. He said, "You don't like them back." I'm like, "Whoa! How did you know what I was about to say?" You know, and I just thought that was just normal. You know, like a little kid. You don't like me, I don't like you too. I'm not your friend. You're not my friend. You know, I just thought that was normal. If someone doesn't like me, of course I don't like them. Like, why would I even consider liking someone that doesn't like me? It just didn't. It wasn't just part of my. Wasn't part of my world. You know, and just by understanding, that's like one example, because you asked for an example. So that's like one example of where I realized actually there's some darkness there. You know, there's some darkness there. But actually, what's really amazing is not letting how someone feels towards me change the way that I want to be towards them. Now, it might change the way I behave around them just purely for the sake of etiquette and purely for the sake of having a harmonious life. But what it can be is that I don't have to dislike them. I can still like them. It just may mean I have to like them from a distance rather than liking them from close, or having love for them, or having some respect for them. And I think just even a little glimmer like that, a little shift like that was just so important for me, because it just took out of my head this whole concept of needing to know who likes me or not, because then I can work out whether I can like them or not. Because actually, it doesn't matter how people are towards me, whether they like me or not. because I don't need to be involved with how they are towards me. I can just have light within me that I can try and share with them. And maybe from a distance, it may be from close, but at least it's light and it's not getting involved in the darkness. There's just one example. There's many, but I thought I'd just share one that just came to mind.
No, I think that resonates with everybody. I think we all have, in some ways, a similar tendency. And I think, in a broad sense, that is the goal, to not be dependent on situations to be who you are. And at the end of the day, if I'm always changing based on the situation, then that makes me so vulnerable as a human being to not being able to stand my ground or be who I want to be. But I think it's so common that, as you said, why would I even consider liking someone that doesn't like me? And I read I don't know if it was a quote or just something on social media, but it was about how if someone doesn't appreciate you being nice to them, be nice anyway. If someone doesn't appreciate you being forgiving, do it anyway, because at the end of it, it was never between you and them anyway. And that's really how it is between you and yourself, or you and divinity. So how you act is always about you. And I think that's, we as human beings very often do justify our actions by saying that they're reactions, taking the responsibility of ourselves. And it was a guru that recently, I think, said, our responsibility is actually limitless. Our ability to respond is much broader than if we just look at it as a response.
Yes. Amazing. I think it was Mother Teresa, that poem. If you can't.
Oh, was it?
I think so. I think I've heard it also. It's really beautiful. Thank you for reminding me of that. I haven't read it or heard it for a long time. And something that came to mind, Trisha, when you said that about being vulnerable, because we kind of, in one sense, what we do, and this is another time when we can really find ourselves in a dark place, is when we do give that power to others to validate us. And by giving that power to someone else, what does that mean? It means that I'm dependent on you to validate me so that I can be happy. And if you don't validate me, then I'm not going to be happy. And actually, if we can't shine that light for ourselves, if we can't access that light from divinity to help us shine that for ourselves, giving that power to others it's torture, because it's, even if someone does validate you, it's never going to be enough. So, one person, two people, 10 people, still you think about the 11th person who didn't, so actually by actually having that light within us, sustaining ourselves, is really a place of happiness and fulfillment. Otherwise, what it's like trying to pour water into a bucket which has holes in it. No matter how much water you pour in, no matter how much you try and fulfill yourself, if it's got holes at the bottom, it's all going to come out, and we're always going to feel thirsty, hankering.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, as it is in the Gita, it's not always the obvious choice that may seem like the right thing to do. Sometimes it may be something that's aligned with us, may not be the most obvious to our rational minds, and that will still be our purpose. So that's still the direction in which we would have to go to fulfill ourselves in order to not be a bucket with holes in it. Like saying no.
Sometimes saying no,
like
sometimes saying no because that's what's good for us. Sometimes, it's ultimately just being ourselves, being authentic to who we really are. And if we're authentic and really become in touch with who we are, that is the light. That is the light, just by having that authenticity. And sometimes what happens is we get so caught up with all our attachments that our attachments take us away from our authentic self. So if you think like a child, like a young child, what happens for a young child? A young child may want to express some emotion, but the parent may not be so emotionally in tune. So if the parent is not emotionally in tune with the child, what will the child do? The child may not get angry. The child may not cry. Why? Because the child has to choose attachment. Because if the child does not choose attachment, the child is not safe. So what happens to the child? The child starts to suppress its authenticity because it needs to be safe in the attachment with the parent. And then what happens for us when we grow up is we get so used to wanting the attachment of our friends, our family, people around us, that we might lose who we really are. And what Krishna's saying to Arjuna in the Gita is, don't lose yourself right now because of your attachment. You're seeing all these people on this battlefield and you're attached to them, but don't lose yourself. Your authentic nature is that you're a warrior, and don't lose that. You're a protector, and do what you were born to do. And if you do what you're born to do with me, with you, with divinity with you, then you will live a happy and fulfilled life. And that's what Arjun goes and does. And then Arjun does live a happy and fulfilled life. So, yeah, thank you for inspiring me to share that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. I know we have about 10 minutes left, so I just have one final question. And after that, anyone in the audience who would like to unmute yourself, ask your question, or put it through the Q&A tab, please feel free to. But before that, my last question is, of these things that we've discussed, is there a practice that we can do regularly, or even just a question that we can ask ourselves that can help us slightly better understand what our purpose is as a person, so we can potentially identify if we're living out of alignment with it?
In terms of a spiritual practice, meditation is a really wonderful way of just spending some time with divinity, spending some time with God. So, for example, this is something I do every day. I can show you. So I have these beads. You may have. So I have these beads here, and every day we just chant on beads. And like, there's this mantra: Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Just chanting this one mantra on these beads every day. Actually, what I've noticed by chanting this one mantra, right? And I think I started chanting maybe over 20 years ago, but just by chanting this one mantra, I really started to feel just life, which was an absolute chaotic mess, just start to sort itself out. It's just like a puzzle that just started, the jigsaw puzzle that just started to come together somehow. And sometimes it does get messy still. Sometimes you still can't find a piece. Sometimes you're wondering if you're even doing the right jigsaw puzzle, if there's a wrong piece that's coming. It does happen. But just by daily meditation, just by daily chanting, what we're doing is we're accessing divinity in our hearts. And what's said to happen is Cheto Darpana Marjanam, it says in the Shastra. And what it says is that by chanting this mantra, what happens is that the heart starts to become cleansed. So all the darkness pops up. We start to become aware of the darkness. And then what can happen? The light can then dispel the darkness. So this is one thing that we can do. And actually what happens through this is a lot of self-awareness, self-realization, and ultimately a spiritual life, a life in touch with spirituality. So I definitely would encourage those that are listening that chanting this mantra, I can say, definitely changed my life in ways that I can never explain just in words. But it was amazing, and it's something that we can do daily that can enrich us in a very heartfelt way.
Okay, and is there any advice you have for someone who isn't specifically inclined to chanting this mantra? Is there something we can find for ourselves that works for us? And how would we go about creating a mantra for ourselves or finding one that works for us?
Yeah. So something else I would really recommend with this is introspective journaling on a daily basis. Because if every day we take some time, 5-10 minutes every day, to take inventory, like doing a stock count of your day. If you had a business, you might do your stock count at the end of the day. Or I hear one of my cousins owns an optician, and he calls up, okay, what was the tills figure? What was the figure? Just like, what was the inventory of the day? What happened today? And ultimately, what does the tills figure mean? It means how much cash came in. But what that means is what happened in the business today. And what I would really say is amazing or really transformative is we can check in with ourselves daily. How are we doing today? How am I feeling today? Can we name the feeling? Am I feeling sad? Am I feeling anxious? Where is that anxiety coming from? What is the difficulty? Just by writing this, and when we start to write, we start to access what's going on inside. We start to write what happened in the day, how we felt in the day, how we felt with some sort of interaction that we came across someone, how we reacted to them or how we responded to them. And in this way, we start to separate the mind and the intelligence, which maybe Chidi Shakti will talk about next week, which will be a really good topic in terms of harnessing the mind. But ultimately, what can happen through journaling is our intelligence creates some distance from the mind. And when the mind gets tempted, when the mind is feeling overwhelmed, or the mind is feeling very disturbed, then the intelligence, spiritualized intelligence, can actually control the mind, can actually help the mind on a day-to-day basis. So I think by doing introspective journaling on a daily basis, 5 to 10 minutes, even if you can't do 5 to 10 minutes, even if it's like 2 minutes, and just name one thing that you've been grateful for in that day. Just by accessing gratitude, what happens is we uplift ourselves. And by uplifting ourselves and energizing our internal self in that way, we're able to dispel inner darkness by just shining some inner light.
My perspective of light from what you said is really consciousness. So becoming conscious about certain processes or aspects that we are usually unconscious about, how we feel on a daily basis, things we might not think about, and also things that we may miss out on. Like you said, shine your light, like where what you focus on grows. So gratitude. So the thing that I found in common is really the power of our consciousness. When we shine the light of our consciousness on something, it's the step, it's the first or the last step in dispelling that darkness.
Yeah, exactly. And these little things done on a regular basis every day, it doesn't sound like a lot, 2 minutes a day or 5 minutes a day. But just by doing it every day, imagine, Trisha, you didn't brush your teeth. That's just 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the evening, right? But imagine you didn't do it. What would your life be like? It'd be horrible, But just by doing it every day regularly, 2-3 minutes in the morning, 2-3 minutes in the evening, it's like what a different life. So just similarly, just 5 minutes of meditation every day, or 5 minutes of reading something uplifting every day, 5 minutes of journaling, 5 minutes of gratitude, whatever it is that we find easier to access, but doing it even for 5 or 10 minutes regularly on a daily basis, it is transformative.
Yeah. And you've been a chartered accountant, it compounds. So anything, it doesn't have to be a lot, as long as it's going for a significant period of time, it all adds up.
Very good point. Yes, compounds. I'm getting some good tips, Trisha, for future classes. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kunal, for answering all my questions and indulging our audience. I would like to invite anybody from the audience, if you've got any questions, to take the opportunity to directly engage with Kunal. No pressure on anybody. If you like, you can also still put the questions through the Q&A tab, and we can try and get you answers after the session and get back in touch with you. Would anyone like to say anything? Any comments? Okay, then. I think that will be it for this session. Thank you so much again, Kunal, for joining us. And thank you so much, everybody, for spending the evening with us, talking about this amazing topic. I know I've learned so much from you, Kunal, and I'm sure it's the same for everybody in our audience. And hopefully we look forward to having you back with us soon.
Thank you so much, Trish, for inviting me. It was a really enlightening, uplifting conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Your awareness and your consciousness uplifted me. So thank you so much.
Oh no, so thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Everyone. Good night.